What's up guys, this is Ray and welcome to Asian Films, and I have another review of an anime movie for you guys today, and that is the movie Spriggan, originally made in 1998 and directed by Kawasaki Hirotsugu. But you may not know the director's name, but you definitely know the guy who was credited as the supervisor, and that is Otomo Katsuhiro. Otomo is, he's just not any normal guy. He's just the guy who brought Akira to life, so you can expect something similar in terms of storytelling and progression to Akira. I think if you check up any review of Spriggan online, you'll definitely see a lot of comparisons between Spriggan and Akira. I'll get more into that later, but so with the story of Spriggan, it's about this organization called Arkham, and it's their mission to track down these ancient artifacts from old civilizations and retrieve them so that way the enemies of the state can't use them for evil purposes. And amongst these people who work for Arkham, there are these elite agents called Spriggan who are used for black ops missions. And so our main character, his name is Ominaya Yu, and he's not only a Spriggan, but he's also a guy with superhuman abilities, and he gets thrown into action when Noah's Ark is discovered. So now everyone wants it, Arkham wants it, these group of terrorists want it, so it's a all-out war to unlock this secret that Noah Ark holds. So for the positives, I have to say of Spriggan, the animation, of course, without a doubt, Spriggan is animated beautifully in the sense that everything moves quite fluidly, very lifelike, and even for its time, this movie was released in 1998, so we don't get a lot of the lush colors we see in many modern anime. But despite that, I think it was probably intentionally made like that because the story does get pretty dark and pretty grisly, and the animation definitely brings it to life. When people get shot up, the way the bodies move and react and therefore explode in puddles of blood, it reminds me a lot of Akira. And even though this movie came out in 1998, the animation quality it definitely rivals many of the movies that get put out even to this day. And the animation has definitely aged well. And of course, the music was great. I think whenever a music piece was put on, it definitely did well in hyping up whatever scene that it was accompanying, and that included the action sequences. Of course, they were also animated beautifully. There was a lot of flying around, a lot of action, a lot of shooting, and this movie just captured everything well. And the world that the story took place in, I think world building is another topic. However, the world that we get introduced to, I'll use that word, that we get introduced to in this movie, I think is interesting. From what I understand, this anime movie is based on a manga, albeit a short manga. And I think this movie did a good job in introducing me and teasing me, so that way it made me compelled to check out the manga. And I definitely want to do that one day if it's going to be kind of the same stuff I got from this movie, albeit more expanded and more fleshed out. But that being said, when it comes to the negatives, because we have such a short runtime with this movie, I think it's like 80-90 minutes, I can't remember exactly, we didn't get a whole lot of good world building. I think everything was, if anything, just glossed over. Like, you get hints of this, hints of that, and you just know that in the source material it's much more expanded on, much more talked about and developed, but you just don't get much of that in this movie. Not only that, I thought the characters were kind of dull, like especially the main character. I think when you first see him, he's a high school student and he has superhuman powers, then you think, hey, I think I could have sworn I've seen this somewhere before. And granted, like I said, it is the 90s, but I think, this kind of character archetype has been around in anime since way back when. And to see this again, and, you don't get much backstory from Ominaya. Like, I mentioned earlier, you get glossed over with many things. You go a little bit into his backstory, but it's not fully fleshed out. He doesn't ever have a completed story arc, so you don't get that nice fleshed out character development that a story like this would need. Instead, you get a lot of cool action, a lot of cool flashy action sequences, but you don't get fully developed characters. And I think because of that, it made Ominaya Yu, and a lot of the other characters just quite dull. Another thing that I didn't like so much, but I understand why they were trying to do it, was the sound editing. I don't know, maybe it was the DVD I had, for some reason, they tried to replicate the sound when people, for example, when people are speaking, as if you were right there in the room, meaning that if someone was quite far from the camera, you couldn't really hear them at all. When they were closer, of course, you could hear them. If they're in some kind of hall, you would get the really weird echo that sometimes it just made it difficult to understand what was going on. And, you know, just for the record, I watched in Japanese, and when they would go into these different areas, it just made trying to understand what was being spoken a bit more difficult. And for my next point, you know, first of all, this movie dives a lot into sci-fi. Not only is it action and spy, black ops kind of story, but it's also a lot of science fiction. And when you dive into some of the science fiction elements, especially in trying to explain why certain things are happening, I thought it was weird and, you know, uninteresting that everyone just knew the exact answer somehow to whatever problem was manifesting. For example, when they encounter Noah's Ark, they learn that they can't penetrate it with bullets or weapons. And, you know, you think, okay, you know, maybe it has just strong armor, but no one really knows the answer why. But for some reason, the solution, the answer that they came up with is because there's some kind of barrier, that this anti-time barrier that prevents time from moving forward directly outside of the arcs. And it was kind of weird. How did you come up to this conclusion that there's this anti-time, whatever, I forget the terminology they use, but there's this anti-time force field that's around the arc? I thought, you know, that wasn't the only sequence which had very bizarre answers out of nowhere. And there's another scene that comes to mind. It has nothing to do with sci-fi. It's more on the spy, Black Ops kind of story. But Yu flies into an airport, and he has all these guns and weapons with him. Of course, they get confiscated by airport security, yet they let you just keep going on into the country, and it's okay. You know, they confiscated the weapons, but they don't bother to confiscate, or they don't bother to stop the guy who seems like a terrorist from passing into the country. I thought that was quite strange. But overall, what did I think of Spriggan? Visually, impressive, without a doubt. Visually, it's impressive. You got a lot of cool action. You get a lot of wonderfully animated movement. But when it comes to substance, everything is pretty much just glossed over, not really fleshed out. And, you know, it's a very short film. I think you can knock this film out in a slow afternoon. But because there's not much substance, not much development, not only in the characters but also the story, you were left just wanting just a little bit more. And I think maybe if you read the manga, that you probably would get what you're missing. I think what they try to do with Spriggan, they try to replicate a lot of things that made Akira successful. I mean, you not only have the level of violence and the amount of blood and bullets being just flying around, you also get the weird same type of archetype for the villain. You get this child who looks like a grandpa, looks like he's been experimented on, and who may have psychic powers. But for the most part, you get the same type of character in Spriggan as you did in Akira. And I don't know if that was necessary. I personally didn't like the character design of the final boss, but I don't know. It is what it is. But anyway, yes, those are my thoughts on Spriggan. What did you guys think, or what kind of questions did you guys have? Let me know in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And by all means, please support Asian Filmless through Patreon. It definitely helps the channel a lot. And hey, did you know I started a Discord server so we can all come together and chat about movies, not just Asian movies, but just movies in general? Hit me up in the comment section below, and I'll provide you a link so you can join in on the server. And yeah, that's about it for me, guys. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you all again in the next video. Take it easy.